Hello all, welcome to Paritranaya. In this class, we shall resume back with an important discussion, that is President's rule. In the previous class, we have discussed about the national emergency or the different types of emergencies that do exist in our constitution. That is national emergency, next is state emergency or President's rule, and the third one is financial emergency. So in the previous class, we discussed about the national emergency, what is national emergency, what are the grounds on which a national emergency is declared. Next, what are the consequences of national emergency, consequences on fundamental rights, consequences on center-state relations, all these things we have discussed. In this class, similarly, we shall discuss about President's rule. So, Article number 355 of the Constitution says that it is the center's duty. It is the center's duty to see that the state government is being carried out as per the provisions of the Constitution. There are provisions in the Constitution. According to those provisions, whether the state government is working or not. If at all the state government is not working as per the provisions of the Constitution, then center has the power to impose President's rule. President's rule. So when will center consider that the state is not running as per the provisions of the Constitution? So it is defined, it is given here in Article number 356. So Article number 356 says that there are two grounds which are considered as failure of constitutional machinery. It means the state is not working as per the provisions of the constitutions. So which are those two grounds? One is when governor of a state sends a report saying that the administration of the state is not being carried out as per the provisions of the constitution. This is the first case. Second case is when state fails to give effect to the center's directions, okay, as per Article number 365. So here we understood that center can impose President's rule on two conditions. So first one is, so let us take Karnataka as an example. Let us take Karnataka as an example. We have here Karnataka governor and here we have President of India. So in one case, governor will send a report to president saying that Karnataka's administration is not going on as per the requirements of the constitution. In this case, president can impose what? President's rule in the state. And in some cases, even without the governor's report also, president can impose President's rule. President's rule. Next, when state fails to give directions to give effect to the center's directions. So what does it mean? It means center gives directions to the states. Center gives directions to the states. If states are not following the directions of the center, then also President's rule can be imposed. President's rule can be imposed. Next, whether the term President's rule exists in the Constitution? No. Nowhere in our Constitution a term President rule appears. Okay. Next, similarly, it is also famously called as constitutional emergency as well. But nowhere in the Constitution there is a term called as constitutional emergency. So famously, we refer it as constitutional emergency or President's rule, but nowhere these terms are present in the Constitution. Next we shall learn with the help of comparison. Let us compare the President's rule with national emergency, then the things will become more clearer. So we have already seen, what is that? When we declare national emergency, who will declare national emergency? President. Who will declare President's rule or state emergency? President. So in case of national emergency, it has to be approved by both Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha within 1 month. Okay, within 1 month. But here, in case of President's rule, Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, they can approve it in 2 months. Okay, in 2 months. It means if President's rule is declared on January 1, then Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, they have a time period of 2 months. That is January and February. Okay, January and February. It means till the last date of February, Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha have time to what? Give the approval or reject it. Next, let us assume if Lok Sabha is dissolved without approval in 2 months, then whether the President's rule will continue to exist or it will cease. Very important question or a very important point to note. So here we can again compare it with national emergency. So what happens in case of national emergency? In case of national emergency also we have seen that if Lok Sabha is dissolved without approving, then national emergency continues to exist. For how many days? for 30 days from the first sitting of the newly constituted Lok Sabha. Similarly here, if Lok Sabha is dissolved without approving, then President's rule does not cease to exist. It continues to exist beyond these 2 months. But provided that in these 2 months, Rajya Sabha should have approved it. If Rajya Sabha has not approved it, then it will cease to exist on the last day of February. Or if Rajya Sabha rejects it, then it ceases to exist on the day the Rajya Sabha rejects it. But if Rajya Sabha keeps quiet, then on the last day of February, the President's rule ceases to exist. But if Rajya Sabha has given permission, if Rajya Sabha has approved it, then President's rule will continue beyond these 2 months. Okay, beyond these 2 months. But when a newly constituted Lok Sabha comes, let us assume on April 1, so all the Lok Sabha members who have got elected, if they meet for the very first time, from April 1, they'll be getting a time period of 30 days. Okay, 30 days. Okay, till April 30th. Till April 30th, Lok Sabha will get permission or get time period for approval. Okay, approval. So Lok Sabha dissolution happens without approval in 2 months. Then President's rule will continue to exist for 30 days from the first sitting of the new Lok Sabha. Provided in the meantime, Rajya Sabha should have approved. Okay, Rajya Sabha should have approved. Very important. Next, once it has been approved by both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, so what will be the duration of President's rule? Similar to national emergency. So in case of national emergency, it extends for 6 months. Similarly here also, it extends for 6 months. Okay, it continues for 6 months. Next, very important. In case of national emergency, what kind of majority is required from Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha? There it is special majority. But here we require simple majority. Very important point to note. So what is the difference between special majority and simple majority? We have already covered it in a separate class. You can please refer that previous video to get an understanding of the difference between special majority and simple majority. Next, extension. Now when it comes to national emergency, for every 6 months extension is required. Okay, after every 6 months, if at all you want to continue national emergency, then extension is required. So whenever you are extending, you require the approval of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha with special majority. In that way, by how many years you can extend? There is no limit on that. You can extend it any number of times. But when it comes to President's rule, there is a limitation. What is that limitation? For every 6 months, after every 6 months, you can extend it by getting approval of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha with simple majority. But this extension, it cannot continue beyond 3 years. It means you can extend after every 6 months, but for maximum duration of maximum of how many years? Maximum 3 years. Okay, maximum 3 years. This is a limitation. And also, whenever you are extending, previously we took an example, right? On January 1, President's rule was declared. Next, on January 2 and January 3, let us assume both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha have approved it. Okay, it means it will continue till what period? Till June 30. Till June 30, because January, February, March, April, May, June. So for 6 months it will continue. So if at all you want to continue beyond June 30, okay, beyond June 30, if you want to continue, then before June, again both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha has to what? Approve it for extension. But while approving, Rajya Sabha approves it, but Lok Sabha is dissolved. Then what happens? Again, the President's rule will continue till the newly constituted Lok Sabha meets, and from that first day of the meeting, they will be given a time period of 30 days. Okay, 30 days. So if Lok Sabha dissolves without continuance approval, 30 days from the first sitting of the new Lok Sabha. Okay, provided that in the meantime, Rajya Sabha has approved. Okay. Next, another very important point to note here is, and it was introduced by 44th Amendment. So we need not remember this 44th Amendment, but this provision is important. What is that provision? So we know that President's rule can be extended for maximum period of 3 years. But for every 6 months, after every 6 months, both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha has to again approve it by simple majority. But if at all you want to extend President's rule beyond 1 year, there is a condition. What is that condition? National emergency should be in operation either in whole of India or some part of India. If national emergency is in operation either in whole of India or some part of India, then itself you can extend President's rule beyond 1 year. And also at the same time, and also at the same time, Election Commission of India has to certify that presently holding of elections will not be possible, and that is why extension of President's rule is necessary. So only when they certify, then national President's rule can be extended beyond 1 year. So this is again an important condition. Next, revocation. So we saw that in case of President's rule, who will revoke? Sorry, in case of national emergency, who will revoke? President will revoke. Similarly, in case of President's rule, who will revoke? President will revoke. Okay, President will revoke. In case of national emergency, whether parliamentary approval was required for revocation? No. Similarly, in case of President's rule, parliamentary approval is not required. Okay, similar to national emergency, in case of revocation of President's rules also, parliamentary approval is not required. Okay, not required. Next, very important point, consequences of President's rule. So what happens as a consequence of President's rule? So very important. So whatever the state government, whatever the functions the state government is performing, whatever the role the governor is performing, so all these powers will be acquired by President. So President will become all the powerful. So he will acquire the power of state government. So what is state government? Council of Ministers headed by Chief Minister. So Council of Ministers headed by Chief Minister. So whatever the Council of Ministers will do, all that work now it will be done by President. Similarly, whatever the work governor does, so that powers can be taken by President. Okay, President. Next, President can also declare that whatever the job the state legislature is doing, that can be done by Parliament. So what does it mean? Now, state legislature, it can make laws on which subjects? It can make laws on list 2 subjects and list 3 subjects. Normally, it can make laws on list 3 and list 2 subjects. Now, President will say that the laws on these 2 subjects can be made by Parliament. Parliament. Normally, Parliament will not make laws on list 2 and list 3 subjects. But now, during President's rule, Parliament can start making laws on these subjects. Next, suspend some constitutional provisions relating to some body or authority. There will be some constitutional machineries in the states. For example, let us take State Election Commission. Okay, State Election Commission. So, President can say that State Election Commission will stop functioning during President's rule. So, then President has that power as well. Okay. Next, President dismisses State Council of Ministers. Very important point. In case of national emergency, we have seen that President will not dismiss State Council of Ministers. So State Council of Ministers, they continue to exist, but how will they work? As per the directions of the center. Whatever the directions the President gives, as per that direction, the Council of Ministers will work. But in case of President's rule, Council of Ministers do not exist. So all those the functions performed by them will be assumed by President. Okay. Next, State Governor on behalf of President will administer the state. So what happens? As Council of Ministers are not there, so who will do all the administration? Governor will do the administration. So who has given the power to governor? President has given the power to governor, because President does not have sufficient time to make the administration, to do the administration of the state. So governor will be given that power. So governor on behalf of President will administer the state. So while administering the state, he requires help of few people. So he can take the help of Chief Secretary of State. So who is Chief Secretary? He will be the senior most IAS officer. So he can seek his help to what? Run the administration. Next, how about Legislative Assembly? We saw about Council of Ministers, but now how about Legislative Assembly? MLAs, do they exist, continue to exist, or they do not exist? So MLAs, they may be dismissed. Dismissed is a temporary phenomena. It means for time being, President may ask the MLAs to sit in their home and not to come to the Legislative Assembly. Whereas the Legislative Assembly may be dissolved. So it's permanent. So once the Legislative Assembly is dissolved, it means MLAs will lose their position, and if at all they want to return back to Legislative Assembly, then they have to contest in the election, they have to win, then itself they can return. So President has an option, either he can dismiss Legislative Assembly or he can dissolve. So it means during President's rule, Legislative Assembly cannot make laws on the state subjects. Either it may be list 2 or list 3 subjects. Okay, it cannot make laws. Then who can make laws on the state subjects? Because the state legislature does not exist. Then who can make laws? So parliament can make can make laws. Okay, that is on a list 2. On list 2, parliament can make laws. Okay, parliament can make laws. Very important. Now, state legislature is suspended or dissolved, and parliament does not have sufficient time to make laws. So what parliament can do? Parliament can delegate the law making power to president. So parliament has the power to make a law on subjects of list 2, but parliament does not have sufficient time. So what parliament will do? It will delegate the power to president. It will say that parliament does not have sufficient time, so please you do it. Okay, so you do it. So now either president will make laws on list 2 subjects, or if president also does not have sufficient time, he will appoint another authority. Will appoint another authority and ask them to do the laws on what? State list subjects. Okay, state list subjects. Next, similarly, when Lok Sabha is not in session, president can authorize the expenditure from state consolidated fund. Okay, so for example, let us take Karnataka as an example. So let us assume in Karnataka we have president's rule. Okay, president's rule. So in order to spend money, we require permission of Lok Sabha during president's rule. But if Lok Sabha is not in session, then what president can do? President can what? Even sanction expenditure from the consolidated fund of Karnataka. Consolidated fund of Karnataka. Next, laws made not coterminous, a very important point to be noted. So what is it, not coterminous? So we have seen that during national emergency, parliament can make laws on the state subjects. Okay, state subjects. So what will be the longevity of those laws? So those laws, they cease to exist on the day the emergency ceases to exist. So what does it mean? For example, on January 1, we have declared national emergency. So on June 30, national emergency ends. Okay, June 30, national emergency ends. So let us assume parliament has made a law in the month of February. Let us assume law 1 on a subject called as police. So police is a state subject. So whatever the law parliament has done on a state list subject called as police, so on June 30 it ceases to exist. Means on June 30 it stops working. But in case of president's rule, the parliament can make law on state subject. So that is law 1 itself. Let us take law 1 itself. But on June 30 it does not cease. It continues to exist. It continues to exist beyond June 30. Okay, June 30. That is what it is called as not coterminous. It means it is operative even after president's rule. Even when the president's rule ends, even after that, it continues to exist. Continues to exist. But one interesting thing is, it can be repealed, altered, or re-enacted by the state legislative assembly. It means later on when the MLAs come, they can change the law. Okay, they can repeal the law, or they can re-enact it. Okay, they can completely bring a new law as well. New law as well. Next, powers vested in concerned state high court. So we have seen that president can take the powers of legislature, president can take the powers of executive, but when it comes to judiciary, president cannot take the powers of state high court. Similarly, president cannot suspend the provisions of constitution related to high court. So it means high court will continue to enjoy its power. So the powers of high court cannot be taken by president during president's rule. Very important point to note. Next, let us just make a quick comparison between national emergency and president's rule. So we have seen that in case of national emergency, parliament itself can make laws on state subject, no delegation. So during national emergency also, parliament can make laws on list 2 subjects. During president's rules also, parliament can make laws on list 2 subjects. But what is the difference? In case of national emergency, parliament itself can do it. It cannot delegate. But in case of president's rule, parliament can do by itself, or it can delegate it to president or any other authority. Okay, any other authority as fixed by president. During national emergency, relationship with all the states undergo modification. Okay, relationship of center will undergo a change with Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, Sikkim, Manipur, with every state. But in case of president's rule, relationship of the center will undergo a change with respect to a state on which it has imposed president's rule, and not with every state. Next, when it comes to approval of national emergency, it requires special majority, but approval of state emergency requires simple majority. National emergency has impact on fundamental rights, whereas President's rule, it does not affect fundamental rights. Next, very important, when it comes to revocation, we have seen that both in case of national emergency and President's rule, who can revoke? President can revoke. But at the same time, in case of national emergency, what we have seen, Lok Sabha can exert pressure on President to revoke national emergency. So only Lok Sabha has that power, not Raj Sabha. So Lok Sabha, by passing a resolution with simple majority, can exert pressure on President, asking him to withdraw the national emergency. Okay, withdraw the national emergency, and President is bound to accept it and he has to withdraw it. But there is no such provision when it comes to President's rule. So in case of President's rule, President alone, on his own, he can what? He can withdraw. Here, no such provisions exist with respect to Lok Sabha or Raj Sabha to force the President to revoke the President's rule. Very important. Okay. Again, very important point to note. Whenever I say President only on his own, it does not mean President's discretion. It means President has to work as per the expectations of Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. So wherever I have used the term called as President, you should always connect that it is not President alone. It is Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. Okay, Prime Minister. Next, use of article number 356. So when you read Lakshmikant, you come across many points, and there are many things which have to be ignored, because from the examination point of view, we also need to understand the demand of the examination. As the syllabus is very bulky, we have to ignore many things. Okay. So here, this statement is important. What is it important? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that article number 356 means the provisions of article number 356, that is declaration of President's rule, should be a dead letter. Dead letter means it has to be only used in the rarest of rare cases where it is absolutely necessary. Okay, necessary. Probably he might have anticipated the negative consequences it could have had. So that's why he said that it should be a dead letter. But later, this constitutional provision was misused, and that's why it became a deadly weapon. Okay, deadly weapon. So such kind of points can be used in order to quote in mains answer, and definitely it will fetch extra marks. Next, Bommai case is associated with article number 356. This much if we remember, that would be sufficient. Okay. So detailed about the Bommai case would not be necessary. So whenever while reading newspaper, when we come across current affairs across this Bommai case, then we can note it down. But from static point of view, so this Bommai case is not important. Okay, not important. Next, scope of judicial review. So we already know judicial review. What is judicial review? Whenever government takes any executive action or legislative action. Okay, if it brings any kind of laws or it performs any kind of executive actions, that can be subjected to judicial review. So what does it mean? It means a legislative action or a judicial action of a government can be challenged in court, in Supreme Court or High Court. So then Supreme Court and High Court can decide whether the decision taken by the government is correct or not, whether the decision taken by the government is as per the provisions of the Constitution or not. So if it is as per the provisions of the Constitution, then it will uphold the decision of the government. If it is not as per the provisions of the Constitution, then it will what? Deride that decision of the government. So that process is called as judicial review. So here the question is whether declaration of President's rule, can it be subjected to judicial review or not? It means President will what? Declare President's rule. So anyone can challenge it in court. So this is the question. So it has gone, it has evolved. So 38th constitutional amendment said something, 44th constitutional amendment said something. So all these things, they are not important from exam point of view. Now, so what is important is Supreme Court in Bommai case in 1994, what it said? It said that the declaration of President's rule is subject to judicial review. So this point is important. So in book, when you come across 38th constitutional amendment and 44th constitutional amendment, so all these minute details are not important. For us, what is important is whether judicial review is subject, whether declaration of President's rule is subject to judicial review. Yes. So when did this come? This came through 1994 Supreme Court judgment. In which case? Bommai case. Okay. So this information is beneficial from both prelims as well as mains point of view. Okay. Similarly, in the book in Lakshmikant, you'll come across some cases of proper and improper use of article number 356. So they have given a lot of other information. So all that information is not important from examination point of view. So without any fear, just ignore it, just skip it. Because in order to crack this examination, understanding the demand of the examination and preparing accordingly is also very much important. Okay. So in this class, we discussed about the precedence rule. Similarly, in the subsequent classes, we will be discussing other important concepts related to polity. For all our updates, subscribe to our channel and hit on the bell icon. Thank you.